Welcome back to another episode of the Outsider Sports Baseball Podcast. Corey, Jason, John Pauline, Dylan, Mel, Ben Mandel. Guys, MLB had their rivalry weekend. A lot of fireworks going on. Some really great series. This is one of the most well-attended baseball weekends prior to Memorial Day in baseball history, they said. It's one of the biggest weekends they've had. So they must have been
called it.
Right, yeah.
Yep. Last week we said, twice a day a broken clock is right, and the MLB was right on a rivalry week.
Yeah, hopefully they do it again. Maybe try to do it later in the season. I think that might be the next big step because then you have a lot of playoff implications in some of these rivalries.
No, I like doing it in June. I think that's when you're going to get peak attendance, mid to late June.
I think they should do it in division, bigger rivalry matchups towards the end of the season because those could also massively affect playoff implications. Yeah. So the way that they did, for example, Mets Yankees here, do Red Sox Yankees, make sure it's one of the last series of the year.
Right. I'm sure every team has a second rival that they could do a second rivalry weekend with.
And I think that's September, nothing but divisional play.
The issue with that is there's not enough divisional games to do that because they expanded.
Save them all for September.
Save them all for the Mets and Braves don't play until September 1st. That would be brutal.
What a time.
It would be terrible. No, look, there's enough divisional games because you play them 14 times each?
No less.
There's definitely enough for an entire month, though.
There's four series.
Sparse.
4 series against each team, I believe. One home, one away. I believe it's 14 because you get 7 and 7.
No, because they went to every team plays every team.
It used to be 19 before that.
I think it's almost down to 11.
Even if it was 6. Even if it was as small as 6, there's enough for an entire
series.
Month. Yeah. Even if it was
series,
just
you get 2 against each team, just get the other 2 spread out throughout the season.
They definitely
team plays 13 games against each of the 4 opponents with its division, so 52 games total.
Yeah, there's more than
that's more
than the days in a month.
So
you can start it in August.
25 division games in September. There you go.
You can take that one for free, MLB.
My only argument against that would be you're seeing the same teams and the same pitching.
It doesn't have to be the same; just has to be divisional.
Guess what? The Marlins, who are 10 games out, maybe have a shot.
Yeah,
get hot.
Come all the way back.
Yes, sweep the month.
Hey, guess what? You go and you rip off 23 wins. It's not completely
the Colorado Rockies are back.
Makes the trade deadline a little bit more enticing or not enticing at all. Who knows?
There is something I do want to talk about, guys. Major League Baseball is reinstating 17 players off of the lifetime ban list. Pete Rose, Shoeless Joe Jackson, Eddie Cicotte, Happy Felsch, Chick Gandil, Fred McMullen, William Cox, Phil Douglas, Lee McGee, Benny Knopf, Gene Paulette, Joe Jadine, Lefty Williams, Buck Weaver, Swiss Risberg, Jimmy O'Connell, and Cozy Dolan.
There were some fire names in there.
Yes. A lot of those guys were on that 1919 Black Sox team. Not everybody was actually guilty of throwing the series, but at least 2 of them knew about it and didn't say anything. Then you also have the Shoeless Joe Jackson. His wife probably knew, he didn't because he didn't know how to read. Then Pete Rose and a couple other guys that didn't bet on baseball. I know one guy, he was banned for stealing a car, changing the color of the license plate, and reselling it. Interesting way to get
so
banned.
Random. That's so
Yeah, that one was.
I mean, now you have guys who will be a Aroldis Chapman and beat their wives, and they're fine. They just get a suspension and they're right back.
William Cox also owned the Phillies. He was the owner that was taking bets on baseball. He owned the team for 276 days before he was banned.
Game, respect game. I mean, Pete Rose is the one to talk about. And
Pete Rose is, and I do want to know if some of these guys you think will make the Hall of Fame, and should they make it?
I think Pete Rose should. For starters, I think it is a when you know it's against the rules to be betting, you shouldn't do it. But at the end of the day, Pete Rose never bet against his team. He was betting on his team. So if anything, he had more motivation to win. And again, similar to what Ben mentioned, there's a lot of players that have done a lot worse in Major League Baseball. Pete Rose is one of the best baseball players of all time. And I think it would be criminal to keep him out of the Hall of Fame because he bet on his team. But just because the MLB they had to wait until after he passed away. Lifetime ban. We talked about this last week, I believe. What does that mean? Well, now that he has passed on, he could potentially be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, look, it's something that everyone kind of knew was going to happen. Pete Rose, you cannot tell the story of baseball without him. So he has to be in the Hall of Fame. They wanted to send a message and let him know and let everyone know what's going to happen if you do anything remotely like this. Now that he's gone, Pete Rose never got to live to see it happen, but the story of baseball will be told with him.
I mean, there's some questions though about him being in the Hall of Fame based off of, I guess, his characters, like stuff, off the field stuff. But I mean, I don't think that matters because it's about how he played in the game, not his character. Like he was just one of the best players of all time. About 4,000. I don't think that's ever going to happen again. Like I don't think you're going to see that happen, especially with like how players' careers seem to get shorter and shorter. So, I mean, this is one of the few things that Manfred has done that I think is actually a good thing. Like he actually got something right. MLB got something right finally.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be up to the voters, and how do the voters feel? We've seen them even with players who were on steroids and then off steroids. They've been pretty firm on not allowing those players into the Hall. Are they willing to go back on this?
Well, they're actually. I'm surprised, and I kind of want to get you guys' idea on this, because they're not going to be eligible for the baseball writers ballot, even though they've meet all the criteria. They're going to be brought right to the veterans committees. So the earliest that they can get in, at least some of them, is I think 2028 is when their committees meet. And we haven't really seen how the committee's made up of executives and Hall of Famers, vote on these steroid guys, because Bonds and Clemens have only been off the ballot for like 1 year, maybe 2. So it's going to be interesting to see how they treat the, gambled on baseball, because it means more to them that they gambled on the game than it does to the writers. So I think the writers would let these guys in.
Yeah, I think they're going to give it a few years too. That way everybody can kind of just get to the same consensus decision.
What do you think that this was the right move for Manfred to do? He said now that he made pretty much baseball official policy. A lifetime ban ends at death. Now, could we see, them not really use that lifetime ban anymore? Was that the right thing to take away from that ruling?
I think the move happened too late. I think personally it should have happened while Pete Rose was still alive. I don't think it should have been a lifetime ban, but I think I agree with what John said, that better late than never, I suppose.
So when it comes to, these guys that had a lifetime ban, do we think the steroid guys that are, not on the ballot anymore, and even ones that are still there, like A-Rod, do we think that they'll be given a de facto lifetime ban where people won't vote on them until they die, and kind of treat it that way, as like a shadow ban almost?
Honestly,
is there any correlation between the two, what we could take?
That's where I was going. I don't think that these things can really be compared, because when you look at, A-Rod specifically, he played after all of these accusations. So it's not like he has a lifetime ban. It's just the writers don't feel like you should be a Hall of Famer if your legacy is tainted. And I think that's really the big thing, is that this is coming directly from Major League Baseball, whereas the writers, they feel their type of way. And, I would assume the committee's going to kind of keep that consensus the same with the amount of steroid guys who just haven't got in. That's the precedent. It's a lot different when it comes to guys being removed from the banned list.
Yeah, I agree.
Any final thoughts or opinion on this thing? It is a pretty big thing in baseball that these guys are now eligible for the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I just think I'd want to reiterate, better late than never, and Pete Rose is a Hall of Famer. I don't think that should be something that's up for debate. I just think now that his lifetime ban has been served, we could do right by his remaining family and by the game of baseball and put him in the Hall of Fame.
Now we do have another hot topic to discuss. Ben, can't wait to see you try to dance around the seriousness of this issue. Juan Soto. Guys, Soto and the Mets played the Yankees this weekend. Soto's de facto homecoming to the team he called home for one season. A lot of talks coming out now about maybe he's regretting it. Maybe he never even wanted to be a Met in the first place. I do want to read, before we discuss, an excerpt from ESPN. Not just some nobody reporting it. This is, the worldwide leader. This is the excerpt. The second instance was Soto's conduct after the Mets 8-2 season loss. Not only was he held hitless, but the signature swag had vanished. Soto's bat seemed slow, and more surprisingly, he's put on a few pounds around the middle. Just as Soto turned his back on ESPN, he did the same to reporters who were waiting to speak to him in the post-game clubhouse. Soto got dressed and began walking towards the doors. He told a Mets official he'd be back to answer questions after seeing family members outside. Soto never returned. That's not the same stand-up guy who was always at his locker last season. Even after being skewered on Friday, Soto spoke of the obligation to, quote, take it like a man, end quote. 2 days later, he was running for the exit. These are troubling signs for the Mets hierarchy. I'm told that they're concerned about Soto's lack of enthusiasm for his new team. The only time Soto seemed happy this weekend was while he was interacting with Judge, manager Aaron Boone, and second baseman Jazz Chisholm during batting practice. Thoughts?
New York media, baby. This is New York media at its finest. We just went through all this previous slander all offseason. Yankee fans just cannot get over the fact that Juan Soto chose to go somewhere else, and that it cannot be the Yankees' fault. That is all you guys want to say. And you know what I have to say regarding this? And I'm not able to pull up an exact interview on the spot, but back when Soto was a member of the Nationals, he was asked, would you rather play for the Mets or Yankees? His answer was the Mets. And actually, the reason for that was because more Latino and Dominican players play for the Mets. That was his answer. You know what? I'm done with all this Juan Soto nonsense. Get over it. He's gone. He's a member of the Mets. Move on. You guys just won a series against the Mets. Enjoy that. Why don't you celebrate the pieces you brought in who had success, like Cody Bellinger, who had a very nice weekend? I don't know. Maybe go ahead and praise that guy or praise Aaron Judge. Enjoy what you have in Max Fried. Stop worrying about Juan Soto. He's not yours anymore. Enough. He's gone. I don't take anything from this article. It's, just because ESPN reported it doesn't mean there's a ton of truth to it. And again, it's the New York media trying to spin everything they possibly can.
No, Ben, you said you called it slander, but is it slander if it's true?
I don't believe it's true. You know what? You sit there and say that Juan Soto regrets his decision. That's 100% slander. Juan Soto didn't come out and say, I regret this decision. I wish I stayed with the Yankees. So, yes, you know what? That is 100% slander. That is putting words in Juan Soto's mouth.
Here's where I want to say that I believe that there were some bad intentions from ESPN towards Juan Soto on this article. Part of what you read just clicked and stuck out to me. They said in their article that Juan Soto was supposed to be mic'd up during this game, like they do on all the Sunday Night Baseballs, and they were going to talk to Soto, and then he bounced out of it. And ESPN knows the ratings, the clicks, the impressions, all of which that they lost because they couldn't talk to Juan Soto. They couldn't say, what's it like to be back on the Yankees? What was it like talking to Aaron Judge? Do you miss any aspect of this team? And get those questions on tape. So they said, you're not going to give us the impressions that way? Fine, we'll get them our way. However, there was multiple moments this weekend where I thought Juan Soto looked like a guy who missed the Yankees and Yankee Stadium. Not saying he regrets his decision, but you could see some somberness and sadness to be against his former team. And it wasn't the sense of, oh, he couldn't wait to not be a Yankee and he hated playing there, that some people pushed it as this past offseason. There was clearly some, damn, I made a lot of good memories here. It's kind of sad to be back.
Ben, what do you think it is that he's kind of lacking that swag that he's had? He's not really even doing the Soto shuffle much anymore. There's got to be something up with him. Take the Yankee stuff aside. He's not playing well to a standard.
This is, I would say, probably his worst season statistically. It's got to be up there. But, again, we just did this with Francisco Lindor. It's his first year with a new team getting settled in. Look at Francisco Lindor now. It took him like 2.5 years to really find himself. Like, he had a good year 2, but he dropped back off again in year 3. This is not anything I'm worried about. Juan Soto is going to figure it out, and he's too good of a player not to.
The only reason I don't think that, that's a fair comparison, Lindor's only played on 2 teams. He was with Cleveland and then the Mets. And it took him, like you said, like 2.5 years to get really comfortable with the Mets. Soto went to San Diego and performed. He spent 1 year with the Yankees in New York, the same city as the Mets, and it didn't take him long to acclimate. He was, playing well from day one. So it's not fair to say he's acclimating to a new team and it takes time because he's done it twice before without needing that.
100% acclimating to what is the largest contract ever given out in professional sports. So you know what? No, but that's all different kinds of pressure that you're adding that can be similar to playing in a new city. You know what? Yes, it's an excuse, but I'm not sitting here saying it's okay that he's doing poorly, but I'm saying I'm not worried about it. We haven't even played 2 months of baseball yet. So
what do you think?
Well, I think there's something too as well, and I'm not trying to take a shot here or anything, but you were hitting in front of Aaron Judge, who is the best hitter in baseball last year, so you were getting better looks, and now you're that guy in your lineup. Coming into this year, we all looked at Juan Soto as the best hitter in the Mets lineup. We looked at it as a good lineup, but Juan Soto was the central piece of that, so teams are scheming around him. Last year, teams were scheming around Aaron Judge.
No, but it's also not a coincidence, though, that Pete Alonso is then in turn having a career year. Lindor is having his best start to a season as a Met. Lindor has been horrible to start seasons. Even this year, it took him about a week, but he still kicked it into gear. It's not his presence alone in the lineup is unreal. You saw what happened when he was out of the lineup for the first time against Pittsburgh. Shut out. So, look, even if he's not sitting there and hitting over 250, it's fine. His presence is doing a job until he kicks it in. It's still not even 2 months. Took Lindor a year and a half before he had his best month as a Met.
What about all the Met fans that are turning on him? You can't go on Twitter and not see Met fans complaining about him.
Every fan
I've
base.
Frank the
There's so
Tank.
many Met fans. Frank the Tank, again, I'm a Devils fan as well, so I deal with Frank the Tank in that aspect of my life as well. You can't listen to that, but you know how many Met fans went and turned on Lindor? Guess who's going to be right there as a leader and the unofficial captain, should be official captain of the Mets, in Francisco Lindor. He's going to be right there to bring him right through. Because guess what? Soto's here for 5 years minimum. Lindor is here for the entirety of that. He will get him through it.
That's interesting you bring up the 5 years minimum. In what world do you not see him here 15 years or however long it is? Why 5 years minimum?
Well, it's just simply not going to happen, because the only way Soto feels like he wants to opt out of that contract is if he can't win with the Mets, or he's not performing. And if he performs, the Mets are going to win.
Well,
They're
the
going to
Mets
be on the cusp of it.
But
If
the
he's
Mets
not
have that
performing,
voidable opt-out, though, where if they add in, some more years and more money, it voids his opt-out. So is there a
yeah,
way
but
he's
I'm
not a
saying
Met?
either way, the Mets, if he's performing, the Mets void it. If he's not performing, he's not going to want to opt out, because he's
Right,
not
so
going to
is there a
snip
world
the
where he's
contract
not a
close to
Met
what he's.
in 6 years from now?
There's not, but I'm saying worst case scenario in terms of the Soto situation is he's here for 5 years, and Lindor will be at the 5 years isn't the point. You're getting hung up on the wrong part of it. Francisco Lindor will be a Met so long as Juan Soto is at this point. That's
2030, the
and
return
Francisco
to the
Lindor,
Bronx.
look, he is a tremendous leader. Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor, I guarantee you by the end of the season, are best friends while the Mets are popping champagne winning the NL East.
I kind of like how that's your idea of, end of the season, your goal, just win the NL East. Shoot higher, Ben. I believe in you.
The Dodgers are still a team.
Ben
I don't
did
care
in the
about the
preseason
Angels.
predictions say the Mets were going to win the World Series.
So are you losing faith in them?
Why? How do you lose faith in a team that's been fantastic to start the year?
You're the one who said they're popping champagne winning the division, not the World Series. So I'm just trying to get to the bottom of this.
Well, because whoever's won the NL East has gotten bounced in the first round in this new format every time. But, who knows?
I mean,
He's worried about when Frankie Montas gets in. They're just going to be capped at NL East winners.
I mean, that kind of does bring me to what I want to talk about next, because the Mets are 3-3 since our last episode, right? They went 2-1 versus Pittsburgh, 1-2 versus the Yankees. They're 29-18 overall, and they're only a half game up on Philadelphia. Now, I think for this week, at the very least, it's more fair to combine talking about the Mets and the Yankees, because they had that series versus each other. The Yankees are 4-2, 2-1 versus Seattle, 2-1 versus the Mets, 8-4 over their last 12, which was probably their hardest stretch of the season in terms of teams they played. 27-19, they're 5 up on the division in Boston. What do we make of these two teams? Only about a game and a half separates them. The Mets, though, like Ben was talking about, whoever wins the division has gotten bounced in the first round, and they're only a half game up on Philly. Are we getting a little nervous that the Mets might start faltering, or do we think that they're going to be able to tread water and then extend that lead?
Look, when it comes to the standings, you can't really watch what other teams are doing right now. It's still so early. You really need to, through July, just focus on yourself and getting wins. Just win series, win games. Right now, go up to Boston, try to take 2 out of 3. come home against the Dodgers, you got to take 2 out of 3 at home against LA. But you keep racking up wins. The Phillies have a soft schedule this week. I wouldn't be surprised if they're tied or Philly ends up in the lead in the division. That doesn't mean the Mets are in a swoon by any means. It just means the schedule picked up a bit. You're not going to sit there and win 8 out of 10 every single week or every single couple of weeks. You're going to have stretches where you lose 5 out of 7. You know, it's going to happen. I'm not worried about it. This is a competitive team. The pitching, although has been great and I expect to still be good, is going to take a dip at some point. So it's not something that I would say I'm stressed about with the Mets. I think, you know, the big thing is things are never as good as they seem and they're never as bad as they seem. When the Mets were sitting there, you know, rolling through their schedule, it was not ever as good as it seemed. But also when things are bad and you lose 2 out of 3 to the Yankees and then you start by going down against, you know, Boston, it's still not that bad. It's not as bad as it seems. This is a really good baseball team. This is going to be a playoff team. And look, this division's going to go back and forth because the Phillies are a really good baseball team despite their bullpen and Jose Alvarado getting that suspension.
Yeah, I watched the Subway Series this weekend, and for the first time in a long time, I really thought that could be the World Series this year. Because I know that after last year, we look at the Dodgers as this unbeatable team, but we're in the midst of the NBA playoffs right now. And I think the way that everybody looks at the Dodgers is a similar way to everybody looked at the Boston Celtics. And they're not even in the conference finals. In baseball, it's anybody could get hot. Would anybody here be surprised if the NLCS was Padres Mets? Probably not. So I think this is a real potential World Series matchup. You look at the Mets, their pitching's been absolutely excellent this year. We just talked at length about Juan Soto, but again, he's one of the 10 best hitters in all of baseball, undisputedly. He is going to figure it out. He is going to be a really good player for this team once things get rolling for him. Their team is excellent. And the Yankees, I came away from just this past kind of 2 weeks really impressed with what they've done on the West Coast road trip. And then in this Subway Series here, their offense has been the best in baseball as the lineup has really started to produce. Cody Bellinger, since April 20th, no surprise there, has been a lights-out player with a 1.4 OPS. The pitching, Max Fried has been the best pitcher in baseball, in my estimation. I think he could be the Cy Young winner. In yesterday's game, the rubber match versus the Mets, Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, Pete Alonso, hitless, I believe. Max Fried, ace of a staff. Devin Williams as well. In his last 9 outings, 8 of them have been scoreless. So seemingly in that setup role, kind of producing. And again, like I mentioned, if you can get just him and Weaver, 8 and 9 to be lights out, I don't really care what the order was. The Yankees and Mets both look like teams poised for World Series contendership. You love to see it.
Yeah, just going off that series this weekend, it seems like the Mets, you know, most untalked about issue is their defense. Alonso throwing the balls away. Vientos looks unplayable at third base. How do the Mets go about fixing this? Because you can't have that poor defense from your corners. And then in addition to having a below average fielder in right and left in Soto and Nimmo.
Nemo's not a below average left fielder.
Below average center fielder, my mistake.
He is not a below average left fielder. And even in center, his production out there was not as bad as people made it seem. Look, I get it. Here's an option. You know, let Brett Beatty keep playing, Vientos DH. Or, you know, Alonso to DH a bit. I'm not worried about Alonso at first. His defense has actually improved. I understand his range isn't great. He's had a couple of wonky throws, but no one works harder than the polar bear. He has prided his defense. He is determined to win a gold glove at some point in his career. It's something he has come out and said. And not to mention the fact he is the best at picking balls in baseball. No one has more scoops than Pete Alonso, and no one has more scoops per attempts than Pete Alonso. The guy is a vacuum at first base. So I'm not worried about first. And look, it's not like we're just now learning about Vientos' defense. Yeah, you know what? He could have a few mistakes here and there. Pressure got to him a little bit this weekend. It's okay. This is a young player who is growing and has done great things and was your third baseman last year. It's not like you can't win with Mark Vientos as your third baseman. They were having success. It's not something that I am completely worried about. I think they do need to add a bat because at some point their DH position needs to be more productive than Starling Marte, and Jesse Winker's out. So either way, I don't want a platoon as my DH. I would very much like it to be someone you could plug in every now and then, but a bat you want in your lineup every day.
And then sticking with the Mets, another thing I've seen online, this past week is a lot of discourse on Francisco Alvarez and his lack of development. What do you make of that?
The guy was hurt to start the year. He hasn't even been back for a month yet. He still has pop, and he's a catcher. Like, what do you expect? I don't expect 30 home runs from my catcher. You know what I have noticed in his development? His defense has actually improved. He's throwing runners out. What are you complaining about? And this is why you can't just read random guys on Twitter, random fans on Twitter, because you're not looking at the bigger picture. And that's what, I'm sure the defensive metrics show it, but analytics doesn't completely show how good or how much better Alvarez's defense has been. So I'm not worried about it. He's coming up with hits in big spots. He's someone who I think has developed very nicely, to be completely honest with you. And the fact that Brett Beatty has had somewhat of a turnaround has been a very nice surprise. So what are we talking about when it comes to development? Again, there is nothing to worry about in Mets world.
I was just trying to get the pulse of the people, seeing what I saw, in those Twitter groups. A lot of Mets stuff popped on my feed. Was reading a lot of those comments, and this is kind of what I've been getting from friends texting me in group chats and seeing it online. Another thing I've been seeing, Dylan, I kind of want to get your take, is the resurgence of DJ LeMahieu. It's like a vintage season out of him this past week.
Yeah, we were texting about it as well, and I think you put it best to me. As long as Jazz Chisholm's out, if DJ can get this level of play, great. My response to you was, if the team's going to keep him, I'd really prefer him to kind of take over a little bit of what the team lost with Oswaldo Cabrera and be the utility guy who doesn't play every day. Because if you can get a well-rested DJ LeMahieu and he looks like this, then that is the perfect thing for the Yankees at this point in time after the Cabrera injury. But do I see him as an everyday player on a World Series lineup with Jazz Chisholm healthy? I don't. But, we'll see. If he could prove me wrong, there's a potential opening at third base where the team's going to figure something out. Trade deadline potential. We've heard Arenado from the offseason to now. Do you go Peraza? Do you keep rolling with Vivas? If DJ's playing as good as he is, when Jazz gets back, do you move one of them to third? So there's a lot of options, but I think in a perfect world, LeMahieu is your all-star utility guy who could play third, second, and first base.
Yeah, and just if he can get back to even half the form he was a few years ago and just be a competent baseball player, that's a big add that lengthens the lineup and deepens the bench.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get Jazz back eventually. Stanton should be back within the next 6 weeks, even sooner. I would even say, that's supposed to really, help the team. Now you also have guys like Wells and Volpe who are performing well enough. Both of them are having the best seasons of their career so far. Guys that like Yorbit Bibas, who has the worst swing I've ever seen. That hitch makes him unable to catch up to any pitch ever.
Yeah, I haven't been a fan. I wouldn't mind if he was a prospect that they moved to get somebody at the deadline.
Yeah, so there's some, things that the Yankees could try to clean up in their lineup. Peraza has really struggled.
Yeah.
Dominguez has been more than fine. Against the Mets in that game on Sunday in the 8th inning, he started that inning down 0-2 in the count, and then to have the wherewithal to battle back and walk, that's what really set up that rally to take the lead and win it.
Dominguez at the plate has been everything you could expect him to be, honestly. If he could really develop some additional pop, he would be, because if you remember when he first came up in that Astro series, he had pop. Haven't seen it as much now as a full-time player. Good contact, good at bats, but man, if you could just get a little bit more pop there, I would start to really look at Dominguez as future all-star.
Yeah, even defensively, there hasn't really been many woes so far. He's been fine.
He does move a little funky in left field, but again, this is his first year playing left field. He came up a center fielder.
It's not easy to change, even in the outfields. They're not the same positions.
No, and especially if you remember back to the beginning of the season, the way he was smiling after making plays, like he clearly heard the noise about, can you play this guy in left? And also, it was clearly in the clubhouse, and still kind of is, because defensively he is subbed out when possible. Aaron Boone is not shy about changing that outfield
in a little bit, though.
I mean, he did it in the Sunday game, didn't he? In the bottom of the 9th there, Bellinger was making catches in left. I'm pretty sure Grisham was in center.
Yes, and I think that was because Dominguez was DHing that game.
Oh, but still, when he had the opportunity to make it so he wasn't in the field, that was the person he chose.
Grisham too, though, because Grisham has been a bat that you can't have out of your lineup.
Right.
So think about, you have between Judge, Grisham, and Bellinger and Dominguez is the odd one out.
More questions again of what's going to happen when Stanton returns.
Right.
Because one of those guys has to just go to the bench.
That's 5 bats you need in your lineup. And then the only other option would be to play Bellinger at first, and Goldschmidt's a bat you can't take out of your lineup.
Mind you, Ben Rice as well.
He's been great.
Man, if only they could turn one of these guys into a third baseman somehow, they'd be
looking
set.
at you, the greatest 22 in New York Yankees history.
Would you be against them moving one of these high-level players for a really good third baseman? I don't have a name to give you, but if I
would not be opposed if there's a really good third baseman. I just don't think there is a really good third baseman. The only players that are even remotely close to being available, I would even think about moving them for, would be pitching. And that would be, obviously Skeens, who is going to be an interesting conversation, but also Eason King.
If the rails came off in Atlanta and Austin Riley was available,
yes,
you'd move for him?
I would very much consider moving for Austin Riley, especially with the very team-friendly deal he's on.
Yeah, because I'd imagine that the asking price would start with one of Ben Rice or Jason Dominguez.
And who do you look to move first?
In that situation, I would probably look to move Ben Rice first, just because I think it's easier to replace production at first base, whereas Grisham is on the last year of his deal. Obviously, so is Goldschmidt. So maybe you take a look at the free agency class and see what you got, or if they believe in Spencer Jones.
Right.
So
it's very interesting. And then, looking at the Phillies are 4-2 since last week. 1-2 versus St. Louis, but they did sweep the Pirates, and they're starting off on a much easier schedule. They're 28-18 overall. Half a game back of the Mets. So the Phillies, if they go on a little bit of run, now they play the Rockies and all that, they can take over first place. Now, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Phillies don't have much of a bullpen issue, right? Their bullpen is pretty solid that they can afford to lose an arm like Jose Alvarado for 80 games. They're pretty solid back there.
I mean, you would like to think so, but I don't think so at all. I think it's going to be, they're playing good right now. Romano is doing good, picked up the save yesterday, and the 1-run win over Pittsburgh. But that was just the Pirates. I mean, Kirk Green's stepping up. So, I mean, you have some guys stepping up and everything, and Mick Abel was up. Pitched a great game yesterday. But they sent him back down. But they really need bullpen help. I mean, especially because Alvarado's suspended for 80 games and he's not going to be eligible for the playoffs now. So like that really hurts. So when it comes up to like the trade deadline, they are really going to have to go out and get an arm or two.
Maybe the Dodgers will be nice and give them one.
I mean, they have a ton. But I mean, I think they can get through the season like this. Like I think they can still win the NL East or in a minimum get into playoffs with what they have now.
I think they can get in the playoffs, but man, this current bullpen, Jordan Romano's back to your closer, and we saw just over the first part of the season how devastating that could be for the Phillies. I picked him up in fantasy, so I hope he turns it around. But with the way that the Mets are pitching, and we even saw it this weekend with the Yankees, the one thing you'll get out of the Mets is a close game typically. And that bullpen in Philadelphia worries me in close games.
You can't make any mistakes. And even Alvarado, who was struggling a little bit, needing that extra boost, some PED usage, it really shortens a bullpen.
I think it was for weight loss. I think it was a weight loss thing in the offseason that he took.
Ozempic? Ozempic's not
well,
allowed?
I don't think it was that, but it was like a
It was a weight loss.
It was like a testosterone weight loss thing he took in the offseason. He did lose a few pounds.
I mean, how stupid are these guys?
Because he tested positive, and then yeah, but it was in the offseason. I think it was like some kind of thing, but it was a weight loss thing.
I mean, here's what I'll say:
he tested positive and then negative, like after. So it was just
maybe it's a weight loss thing because it's a performance enhancer. Like,
Yeah.
Did you ever think about that?
Out of the bullpen now, Matt Strahm is the only Philadelphia Phillies relief pitcher with lower than a 4 ERA.
The Phillies need to be monitoring anybody with a pulse to join that bullpen.
well, and Nola's hurt now too,
maybe the Phillies are the team that signs David Robertson, who somehow doesn't have a team.
They might.
Bump Taijuan Walker to the pen and trade for Marcus Stroman.
They started that Mick Abel.
They said they brought Mick. He was down though.
But maybe he becomes the fifth starter, and because Taijuan Walker's got a 2.62 ERA, so he'd instantly become the best arm in the bullpen.
Yeah, and I think Painter eventually is going to come up this season.
Closer, Taijuan Walker. I mean, that would be very Philadelphia Phillies.
That'd be great. The only hope is that they have to start hitting. They have to put up 20 runs so the bullpen could absolutely collapse, and we can still win. That's the only way.
All right, guys, let's kind of move on to our moments of the week. For me, to start it off, I'm going to go with the Twins. They were on a 13-game winning streak that got snapped by the Brewers with a 5-2 loss the other day. We didn't really get to talk about them last week because this was at the beginning of their streak. But for the Twins, a team that I was really down on, to go on this 13-game winning streak, they're only a half game up on the wild card and 5 back now the Tigers after a 13-game winning streak. They're, not out of it by any means. Another, solid week. You don't have to have a winning streak at 13 games, but if you keep playing pretty decent baseball, you're going to be able to chip away from 5 games back this early. So that was a huge season saver. It's a shame that it, fell apart, but it was pretty good on them to keep it rolling that way.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the numbers are insane. I think only one team has gone on a 10-plus game winning streak in a baseball season and not made the playoffs or something along those lines, and it was the Mets a few years ago. But I could be wrong on that. I could be wrong on that stat, but I feel like it's something along those lines. So it is actually insane and goes to show how poorly the Twins were playing, that they're still 5 games out of the division despite a 13-game winning streak. Now, I know the Tigers have been one of the best teams in baseball, right there with the Dodgers, Mets, Phillies, Yankees with best records. So look, it's no small feat. I think the Twins are definitely a stronger baseball team than I thought they were going to be. But my moment of the week, it's one we talked about briefly earlier. It's Michael Kay and all these Yankee fans, despite winning a series against the Mets, still having to talk about Juan Soto. Get over it. He's gone.
Go New York, go New
Just
York, go.
leave. Yeah, that's the Knicks. Woohoo. Let's go.
All about the
But,
Knicks.
Yeah, moment of the week, though, is the fact that the Yankees can't even just enjoy a win. The Mets still live rent-free in their head.
My moment of the week, a pitcher that I have hyped up or at least tried to on this podcast for 2 years, and he has sucked for 2 years. However, Kyle Quantrill threw an immaculate inning, and now I feel vindicated. 9 pitches, 9 strikes, 3 outs. Perfection.
I think it's more rare than a perfect game in immaculate inning, right? There hasn't been many here. It's got to be somewhere close.
Some would say it puts him in top 10 pitcher in baseball conversations, and Dylan was correct about all his Kyle Quantrill support.
I think both of those takes need to pump the brakes severely. You're talking about 9 pitches compared to 27 outs? Come on,
There's only
man.
been 116 immaculate innings in baseball history.
How many perfect
Right.
games?
A lot less.
Under 30.
Yeah.
Like
I think
30.
27.
Yeah, come on. Yeah, get that out of here. So
Shout
yeah,
out
that's a
Domingo
brutal take.
Herman.
And just because you throw one good inning does not mean you're a top 10 pitcher in baseball.
Well, that one was embedded with a little bit more sarcasm.
I mean,
I'm
it's
aware,
a
but
lot more impressive than a no-hitter, some would say. There's been 326 no-hitters, 116 immaculate innings.
yeah, but of those no hitters, how many of them are thrown by one pitcher?
A few.
Yeah,
Nolan Ryan had what, 7?
The most recent immaculate inning came last year in September by Ryan Pepio of the Tampa Bay Rays.
Cy Pepio. Cy Pepio.
Prior
I've been
to
hyping up
that,
for 2
A
years.
Cy Young candidate.
we have Michael Kopech, also in 2024 with the White Sox, Johan Oviedo with the Rockies in 2023, 2 with the Astros on the same day in 2022. I don't know if you guys remember that. Phil Maton and Luis Garcia.
I do.
Nasty Nestor threw one in 22 as well. You have Chris Sale, who threw one in 21 when he was still a Red Sox. Oh,
Nothing
by the
but
way, we have 2
stars.
Yankees who did the same thing in 21 on the same day. I'm sorry, read that the wrong way. It's
Ben, you
June
sound like a
4th,
hater.
July 4th, a month away. Chad Green and Michael King. So, of all of those guys, I don't know if
These
any
are
of
all
them-
excellent pitchers,
These
just
are
like
all-
Kyle Quantrill.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I don't know if any of these guys are a top 10 pitcher in baseball.
Chris
I think
Sale
almost
just
all
won the
of them
Cy
made it.
Young.
I'm
When
pretty sure
they
almost all of
did
them have
this-
made an all-star
When
game.
they did this, Chris Sale was not a top 10 pitcher in baseball.
But he was last year.
In 2021, he was
So, in 3 years from now, the Kyle Quantrill take will be proven correct.
yeah, we'll see.
In
about
2 years, the Ryan Pepio take will be proven correct. This is great news for us.
2027 Cy Young. Get your votes in now for Pepia.
Mark it down.
Hi, Pepio. All right.
Good luck with your moment of the week, John.
My moment of the week is the Angels sweeping the Dodgers for the first time since 2010.
Some would say that's more impressive than an immaculate inning.
I mean, honestly, it seems like nothing now. I mean, compared to yours. I mean, like,
Can't all have the best moment of the week.
No, but I could have the best stud in my stud and dud. I'm going with Cincinnati outfielder Will Benson. 6 games, 19 at-bats, 10 hits in those 19 at-bats. He's hitting .526 over the last week. Out of those 10 hits, 5 of them were home runs. 10 hits, 10 RBIs. His OPS was just under 2, 1.959. That's Aaron Judge level OPS. That's pretty incredible. My dud, sorry, John, this is from your birds. Baltimore Orioles pitcher Kyle Gibson. He had 1 start, 1 game. He went 1/3, 2/3 of an inning, 1 strikeout, 1 walk. He gave up 6 hits, 6 earned runs, good for an 81 ERA. Hitters were hitting 857 against him in that 2/3 of an inning. Baltimore firing Brandon Hyde. This is just not a good look because Brandon
Better
Hyde
pitching.
doesn't control the pitching. He doesn't
No.
control what players play.
He made Kyle Gibson be bad.
Yes,
He
he did.
called him up. He called him up after he got fired and was like, "You gotta just throw the game."
I mean, it's a good thing the Orioles GM Mike Elliott's got his bobblehead, right?
Do you think there was any level of like, not retaliation from the team, but oh geez, this is not our solution. Like, who cares? And just like, let's mail in effort weekend wise versus the Nationals.
No, because a lot of them are still fighting for something. I mean, they're a team that thought they were going to be World Series contenders, even though their 2 best seasons in over a decade, they haven't won a playoff game.
Yeah, I mean, and now the players on their team are fighting to be teams or to be players that teams at the trade deadline want to go after. Talking about you,
if
Cedric
Hunter
Mullins.
Henderson, demands a trade, I guess I'll take him on the Yankees. If I
I
have
heard
to.
I've heard Cedric Mullins to the Phillies, combined with relief pitcher Yener Cano.
It would be a great deal for the Phillies.
I would not be opposed to that.
What happened the last time the Phillies got a player from Baltimore, though, an outfielder?
Didn't work
Austin
out well,
Hayes.
but they got I think they got a pitcher though from him. I think the pitcher like worked out well. I
You
think they
can't
traded.
even remember his name.
I think it was it Chance Moses? I forget. He was doing good. I think.
Whoa.
Was
Chance
Craig Kimbrell the guy that
Moses
came
to the
from
Reds.
Good.
Baltimore?
No, he was good. He's good. Like Ben. Like you are such a hater today.
Sipping on
It's
that
like-
haterade.
Just like Soto has you being a hater.
Hey, man.
He's ruining Mets culture. That's what I heard John say. Juan Soto is ruining the culture of the Mets.
I'll go ahead and be a hater. I'll go into my dud first. And it is actually my shortstop and a guy I've praised throughout this episode of Francisco Lindor. One bad
a
week,
side,
it's
Ben.
not the end of the world. Just 1 hit. It was a double in 19 at-bats. He did walk twice, but not what you're looking for, especially on rivalry weekend against the Yankees. Just a 241 OPS.
Some
Not
poor
what
defense,
we-
too.
Yeah, look, just not a good week for Lindor, but I expect him to bounce
Wasn't a
back.
good week for the Mets.
Yeah, here's some more haterade for you, John. My stud is Pete Crow Armstrong. And although it wasn't the current regime that traded him away for half a season of Javi Baez's mediocrity, that trade is now resurfacing as one of the worst trades ever because of what Javi Baez provided and the Mets' epic collapse that season and not making the playoffs. With Pete Crow Armstrong now looking like a pretty good center fielder, and a position that the Mets would love to have locked up for at least the next 5 years of team control. But with Pete Crow Armstrong, his week, 11 hits and 21 at-bats. He was able to get a stolen base in there as well, 10 RBIs, a pair of home runs, 2 triples. He ended up with an OPS of 1.548, a terrific week for Pete Crow Armstrong. Brody Van Wagenen continues to kick in his grave. And by that, I mean his general manager grave. He is still with us.
I'm going to actually follow Ben's advice from about 35 minutes ago, and I'm going to sing the praises of Cody Bellinger as my stud of the week. This week, he batted .458 with 2 home runs and 8 RBIs. Of course, 6 of those RBIs coming on Sunday Night Baseball, and one of those home runs being a grand slam in the 8th inning to secure that win for the Yankees. Cody Bellinger, over the last month, has a 1.4 OPS, so it's stud of the week, but Bellinger has really come along and really been the guy that the Yankees traded for finally. My dud, Michael Harris. Despite his poor play, the Braves are actually finally back above 500, but Michael Harris batting 192 over his last 7 with 6 strikeouts and 5 hits in the last week. Anytime your strikeouts are more than your hits in a week, you are not performing well.
My stud, I'm going to go with White Sox third baseman Miguel Vargas. 10 for 24, 4 home runs, 9 RBIs, batting .400 on the dot. 960 slugging, 407 OPS. I mean, really solid numbers there. And then even though the Angels swept the Dodgers, Jorge Soler did not have a good week, going 4 for 26 with 10 strikeouts, batting 154, 290 OPS, and a 154 slugging.
Brutal.
Terrible. Guys, it is time. Our weekly series highlight. I'm going to start it off. Seattle at Houston. That's going to be a really great series because that is two teams that are fighting for the division. Seattle's 2.5 games up on Houston right now. But Houston, a team that, I'm never going to, turn my back to. I'm always going to have some reservations about them because I don't think they're ever going to be dead. Not while that, Altuve is still walking this earth. He's going to somehow, some way cheat the Yankees out of something.
All the way from left field.
All the way from left field, which he has not been, great at. But the Mariners, the Yankees just faced, they have incredible pitching, not much else. J-Rod has bounced back. Cal Raleigh's a good player, but the Mariners need to figure out how to score runs.
Well, they have Randy Arozarena.
Randy Arozarena is not the same Randy Arozarena he was.
No, he had a good postseason. He had one postseason.
I will say this about the Mariners. 216 runs scored on the year. That is fourth in the AL.
It just doesn't feel that way. And we saw the Mariners, they did not seem any different than the Mariners from last year that couldn't really win games.
I mean, listen, as we're recording, they're up 1-0 on the White Sox at the end of 7, and that feels like a every Mariners game. So
exactly. So you have that, then the Astros, who, I just don't trust to not be a half decent team. So I think that's going to be a really good, important series, especially because let's say Houston sweeps, they could be in first place.
I'm still rooting for the Rangers.
Well, do you see what Jacob deGrom did? He deserves an honorable mention, by the way, on stud. His start this past week, 8 innings, 5 hits, 7 strikeouts. So
vintage.
I saw Passan tweeted out saying
him
that
this week.
When he talked to deGrom back in March, he said he wants to get back to that 2018 level velocity because it's less stress on him. Well, that's when he had his best season as a Met. I understand the 21 first half was his best stretch, but overall, 2018, I think they said in that season, if the Mets scored 4 runs in each of his starts, he would have went 33-1.
Funny because, so Paul Skeens had his first career complete game versus the Phillies, where he went 8 innings of 1-run ball and lost 1-0. And I saw people calling that a DeGrom.
Yeah, no,
you have a Maddox, a complete game under 100 pitches.
He's going to be the new age DeGrom as long as he stays in Pittsburgh. It is what it is. But hey, if DeGrom can be a shell of what he was expected to be, the Rangers are dangerous because all of a sudden that's still the best pitcher in that division, I think. Seattle excluded.
Who else has got a series they want to highlight?
Yeah, well, I'll just quickly throw out NLCS rematch, Mets-Dodgers at Citi Field this weekend. That should be a good one.
Yeah, I got the Padres and the Braves. Like I mentioned, the Braves now just a game over 500 as they look to crawl their way back into the playoff picture. The NL East, obviously it's still up for grabs. They're 5 games back of the Mets at this point, and the Padres just 1 game back of the Dodgers. It feels like in that NL West, every single game all year is going to matter. And this was also a series at the beginning of the year that the Padres just absolutely torched the Braves. So maybe Atlanta looks to get a little bit of their lick back.
My series highlight this week is the NL Central because I love my NL Central. This is Cubs at the Reds. Cubs are currently in first. Reds are 4.5 games behind, so this is a perfect opportunity for the Reds to, get a gain on them and make a shot at first place there. So we'll see.
All right, that's going to do it for us. Corey, Jason, John, Pauline, Dylan, Mel. Ben Mandel. We'll be back at it again next week. Hopefully our teams play even better than they have in the past week. It's going to be fun. June's coming up. I feel like every single one of our teams has gone on a June swoon over the past few years. So that's going to be a nice storyline to follow. Hopefully we all get healthier. But that's going to do it.